All right, good morning. So we're going to talk a little bit about why go to XML. This is a presentation I gave to the STC Silicon Valley a long time ago, and it was a session that people who missed were very disappointed. They were like, hey, when are you going to have her back? Because this is kind of stuff that usually managers see, and that the writers who are tasked with doing XML implementation don't always get to see, and so it's not always clear why they've made those choices, and so we're going to share that stuff with you. So let's real quick talk about what XML is and why it's important. And this is the stuff you typically see, right? Consistent information when you change the XML file. If you've got data content that's conrefed or information that's referenced in multiple books, you change it in one place, you change it everywhere. Multiple outputs, the separation of form and content is pretty much the canonical case for XML, right? You don't spend a lot of time formatting, you write your source, and then you let the formatting take care of itself. And that's all things that reduce cost and improve productivity. The big one here is down toward the bottom of the list, actually, which is really kind of weird that it's down there, but it's for future-proofing your information. I personally still have Word for Windows documents that, I can't open anymore. It doesn't help any that it's on a 3.5 floppy disk, but even if I could have a drive that read the disk, I wouldn't be able to open the documents. And this is not uncommon to find in organizations that have products that last more than a couple of years. I think some time ago I was part of one of the military contractors, and they had told me that one of the big airplane projects was entering its 50th 50 year in operation. So those manuals, have gone through multiple data conversion cost projects because, 50 years ago we didn't have what we have today. We certainly didn't have WordPerfect or FrameMaker. So, just guaranteeing that you can open those documents that were created a long time ago, it's even more important for long-term projects. So that's one at the bottom, being able to create and exchange information. That is becoming a bigger deal than it used to be when you've got working with multiple outsourced teams, or you've subbed out part of your work, or you're using components from other companies, or you're OEMing your documentation. It's more important that you can give your content to somebody else and they can open it and do things with it, regardless of which side you're on, the receiving or the sending end. So on a really simple basis, this is what managers see when when they're learning about this kind of thing. This is an example you typically see to executives because they don't really know the day-to-day work of technical publications people. And so this is one of the things that they'll see. When you do things in a word processing application, your desktop publishing app, you're formatting, and that's how you are indicating something is different from the rest of the content. Right, so your title is bold, bigger font, maybe a different font, and its justification is different. It's centered or justified. That's how you know it's important, or a title. It's kind of like a pigeon language way of marking out something that's important. In XML, you're identifying things for what they are. A title is a title, so you can do things appropriate to it. This is, in a lot of times you'll hear this talked about as metadata about what it is that your content is about. So this is really what you see. One of the benefits for XML is that you actually can identify a phone number as a phone number, an address as an address, or a short description or summary exactly as what it is, so that it can be treated differently because it is identified as being something more than just formatting. All right, these are the basics. In traditional desktop publishing, what you typically have is binary storage. It's proprietary. It's readable only by that vendor's application. You can only open Word for workgroups in that application. Can't even open it in Word 2010. WordPerfect opens in WordPerfect. FrameMaker opens in FrameMaker. If you're in DITA or DocBook or any other XML document, it's really just an ASCII file. It's text. You can open it in any XML-aware application, XMetal, FrameMaker if you're using the structured FrameMaker or even the TCS4. You can open data documents straight out from any other application, Oxygen, ArborText, any of them. And it's always there, it's always available. And in XML, if you have something you need that is specific to your business requirements, you need to, say, change the doc type a little bit. You need it to represent your information as opposed to the general software world of IBM, right? Let's say you're a medical device company and you have an FDA filing requirement. You want to identify your content as the things that they require it be marked up as a device with certain quality assurance attachments or risk identified specific items. They're known as risks. And if you've just got things marked as note and it's really a risk, it's hard to know that every note in your document is a risk because it's not really. Risks are a very specific excuse me, kind of thing that the FDA requires. It's part of your 10 filing. It's different. So you want to be able, if you can identify it as a risk, then you can do things with it specific for that content. If you're in binary storage or traditional desktop publishing and you're trying to do a specialization or customize the doc type, typically you have to do it within that tool's capabilities. For example, in Word, you have to work with the Word template. In FrameMaker, you often have to work with the EDD, which is a different kind of programming language all of its own. So in XML, you can use XML itself, what you already know how to do, to create the specialization. There's no secondary tool or special way of doing things. It is all part of what you see as part of what you've learned in XML. So from a storage point of view, you get a bump to going to XML. From a maintenance perspective, when you're working with desktop publishing applications, you have all your content typically in one big document or in a couple of big documents that are sandwiched together post-processing. I remember having 120-page documents in Word, and about that point, the TOC would kind of stop working all that well if I'd auto-generated it, and you couldn't have parts of that Word document pulled out and then pulled in. That's not necessarily so true some more in 2010, but I haven't really tested the XML inclusion in that. But this is not something that's unexpected. Even if you're using traditional FrameMaker, not the structured frame, you kind of have the same problem. Each chapter is typically in its own file, and those are all bound together by a book file, and that's done. It's combined into PDF or web output at processing time. You don't usually have parts of a chapter broken up into individual files, right? So you got a lot of maintenance issues because you can't have the individual content common information sets. You don't have the automated styling you typically would find in XML, and you don't get the metadata. In traditional DTP, your metadata is the styling itself, possibly the character or paragraph markup, but that requires that every author has absolutely adhered to using it. The first time someone hits a bold key rather than using the bold character markup, you've already missed the consistent markup, and you're already dealing with maintenance issues. And we all know that no Word document comes back unchanged. All right, so this is the IBM goal. This was back in 2007. Lisa Fisher at IBM said, here's our goal. It's the right content, right person, right time, right format, right media. And then later on, she added right language. And if our goal is to do some or part of this multi-factored way of delivering content, then desktop publishing starts to hit its boundaries. So here's what we're looking at, right? Typically, if you're looking at right time, right person, right place, right format, you've got a bunch of topics, you've got a bunch of content on the left-hand side that are mixed, matched, reconfigured, reorganized, shuffled, put together, reconfigured based on some configuration requirement. whether you've got internal versus external information, right? A lot of companies will create internal documents, and there's stuff that they want to drop out of those documents when it goes to the customer, but they really want it there for technical support or field service or even their internal development team. So, you're looking at configuration as a way of changing audience and including or excluding information, and then you're mixing and matching again to deliver to a specific output requirement, right? And maybe not everything goes to the CD or goes to the printed book or goes to the web or goes to the device, right? Maybe you just have the context-sensitive stuff that goes on the machine down here, but you want everything in the book. And maybe the book ships with the machine and maybe it doesn't. Maybe you're just shipping a get started quick start guide or a poster with the product, and you're not doing that with the rest of the book. So this is the issue. You really need to be able to split your content into reusable parts. Just like screws, nuts, and bolts, you want to have pieces you can use and configurations that let you do what you need to do. All right, so I'm going to show you 3 slides that have stuck with me since 2002, and that's saying something. It's 2013 now. At an Arbortext conference back in 2002, there were 3 slides that really demonstrated it for me. This is the first one. You see a piece, the content master on the left-hand side, and the yellow block is a reusable piece that's used in 5 different books. It appears in 5 different places, but it's reused in all of those places. So originally it was all in, traditional desktop publishing. And if they changed that one piece, they'd have to change it in all the other documents. Well, so the problem get compounded for them. They not only went to 5 documents, but all 5 documents went to 3 different output formats. So now you see that yellow block duplicated magnificently. But then it gets a little worse. Their situation, whether it's language or version or product line or some other dimension, your content explodes the more you have it, the more configuration, the more dimensions you're going to, the harder it becomes to manage. If you don't have a piece, you can change just in the master and have it show up in all of the other places. Right? So it's no wonder these 3 slides stuck with me, because really this is a great demonstration of how many places you have to fix something if you're working in desktop publishing. All right, so now I've got 6 other slides, and these come from 2008. Flatiron Solutions, Eric Severson, CTO there, who I've known a long time, did a best practices for DITA presentation, and I pulled out 6 slides from his presentation that show numbers you don't typically see. So first one is, it's very similar to the one we just saw from Hamilton Sundstrom, right? You've got a document with some specific stuff and some common stuff and a way to configure the Linux manual on the left or the Windows manual on the right. The rest of it's the same, just that one piece drops in or drops out. It's configured to how it works, right? So we're talking about sort of the same situation, and we're talking about it now 8 years later. So here's the one that's really good. If you look at this, it's easy and hard to understand how the slide works. If you look at it, there are 4 different documents. This company produced 4 different documents where basically the same stuff was in each document, but it wasn't exactly the same. In this one, it says postal code is required. This one says postal code is a required field. This one says postal code is a mandatory field. This one says postal code must be present. So we've got 4 different statements that are all virtually equivalent, right? But if we're taking this to translation, every last one of them will be translated. You're going to have the same essential paragraph translated 4 times, and you're going to pay for it 4 times. So what they did is they said, okay, well, let's look at how these things normalize. We always get the postal code denotes a specific mail region at the top, and we always have required field at the bottom. Let's standardize and choose these 2 statements for every time we do it. These 3, you get 1, either U.S., international, or applicability for a specific product, right? Because in this one we see U.S. in product A, this one we see applicable country in product A, this one we see U.S. but no product A, this is country but no product A. So you get 1 of these 2 and maybe this one. Okay, so here's where if you look at it, just changing that part, just those 2 part, the first and the second one. We're reducing translation by 75%. And I say 75% because before we were translating it 4 times, the same postal code statement. Now we're translating that statement 1 time, just that one statement, and that's a reduction of 75%. And it's amazing how much that actually translates to. Here's the hard numbers that they shared with us. When you had content reuse, and they were looking at 75%, we have customers who are at 85. That's the highest I've seen, really. You're looking at total cost of word count is reduced, right, because you're doing reuse. Your languages stay the same. Your authoring costs are lower because you're not doing the same, you're not writing it 4 times, right? You're not editing it 4 times. You're not fixing it 4 times. Your translation costs go down 75%. Project management, about the same. You're doing a little bit, maybe a little bit less. Editing costs are less because you're not editing all 4 copies. You're editing the 1 copy and trusting that it's used all the places that it's supposed to be used. Production costs go down to 0 because now it's all automated. And you're looking at a total cost savings of $300,000, almost $400,000. And in an environment where every company is trying to save money and they're cutting staff to do it, you're looking at 3 or 4 jobs. So, I mean, it's a significant thing. For something as small as postal code, the implications and the impact it has is really, really big. And this was based on a study of their customers over the last 10 years. So one real quick, another example, right? Let's say we're changing 1 term, right? And when you're doing translation, when you change a term, you're typically changing the entire sentence, right? If you're using a terminology database, which XML kinds of things will let you do, or localization memory will let you do, yet that also does the same thing. Is you don't have to change all the languages, you just change the term, and then it's populated through everywhere else. So if nothing else, this kind of thing certainly helps reduce cost. So here's their numbers based on cost for correcting terms. And again, you're seeing 2,000 to 100. You're seeing a factor of 10 reduction. 42,000 to 2,000, that's more than a factor of 10, right? You're looking at 5% of what it used to be. And when you're looking at that, this is several months of staff salary. It can really be a big deal. All right, so we're getting close to the half hour, and I want to have at least a little couple of time for questions. So let's talk about the few things to remember. If those numbers don't stick with you, I don't know what else will happen. Remember, work is never done, right? Your content always changes. There are errors, there are changes, there's new features, there's new products. You are acquired by or acquire a new company. It happens all the time. Even if you figure out all your content today, it will be different tomorrow. Maintenance is a big issue and has a lot of cost associated with it. So everywhere that you can adjust that, you have places for saving and even possibly increasing staff. Changes to those things trigger more change, right? If you got a new feature or a new product or a new company, you're going to change your data model will change. There are things that they were doing that you didn't account for and didn't think about and didn't want to have to do. It's less true now if you've got data, unless you're doing some specializations. Today's makes it a little easier to change your data model over time. Metadata will change for sure. New product, new feature, errors, new company. These are things that didn't exist. Who knew the iPad would exist 10, 15 years ago and was writing content that would allow for that? Nobody. It'll change all the time. So you want to be able to make sure that you can accommodate that. New features, new products, new companies certainly may change style sheets. Everybody knows marketing gets it in their heads once in a while to just modernize the website, bring it up to make it look fresh and new and comfortable. That changes your layout typically for documentation, certainly any online help, any web visible help. So all of that stuff will change too. Processes will change when you've got new people and new things going on, who gets approvals and how things move through and when it is permitted to be released. One of our topics coming up is about how to do approval systems and whether you want to separately lifecycle your output formats. And so we're going to talk a lot about how process change triggers more change. And languages. Nobody's doing 50 languages today in their output formats. I know some people doing 25, but most people do 1 and then 5 and then 10 and then 3 more, little at a time. So your supported languages will change, which will change style sheets, which will change processes, which will change metadata potentially, and output formats, right? Again, who did the iPad 10 years ago? None of us. Okay. So rather than being afraid of XML, it's often a good way to look at it providing opportunities to reduce work and increase efficiency. Every one of us is doing things to increase our efficiency or reduce our work, whether it's keeping a text file on your desktop of things that you commonly copy and paste, whether it's keeping a spreadsheet of your tasks and your tickets and what state it's in and who you need to go talk to versus for particular features. We all do it. Whether or not we share those mechanisms with other people on our team or with other people in our working group is typically, you don't see that. Luckily, if you've got a content management system that supports workflow and task tracking and things like that, then you might be able to do some of that. There is some learning curve when you're adopting a new tool, but sometimes, maybe that can help, maybe it doesn't. So the big 3 are, of course, separation of form and content, reuse and repurposing of content, and supporting configuration for content, right? You want to be able to configure for a customer, different audience, different skill level, different language, internal customers versus external customers. You want to be able to support your authoring and publication team, not just creating stuff, but being able to assemble, disassemble, and reorganize books. Brand new book. If you come up with a new one, how long does that take to configure and figure out what's written and what isn't, rather than just cloning and modifying the entire book. And then all across the enterprise, looking for opportunities to help marketing include accurate information in their white papers, right? They're going to copy and paste it from you anyway, so how can you preemptively give it to them in a way that they can use, right? There's all kinds of places for this: customer support, training, legal department, all that kind of stuff. I'm thinking QA and requirements analysis, those guys, right? So any one of these things, these are your big 3 things to remember. These are the things that XML typically gives you, and now you've seen the numbers and know sort of what the proposition is and why they do it, and hopefully that's been useful for everybody. Are there questions, Janice?
If you have a question for the presenter, feel free to type it into the question box. We have no questions at this time. We still have a few moments, so we'll give them a couple of minutes to...
Well, we let the questions come in because I know sometimes it takes a while to type it in, and I'm a quick talker, I know that too. Next session will be in August. It's also a Monday. We're going to do a little bit more detail of this presentation, talk about reuse strategies, talk about repurposing content and how you do it and what you look at within a couple of examples. You've already seen how translation costs drop, but we're going to talk about it a little more in detail next time. That's the registration link on the bottom. Also, for anybody who's part of the Master Series, the Master Series starts meeting next Monday. These are more single conversations, not presentations. So anyone who's in attendance gets to present their issues, and we all work together like your board of advisors and help you figure out how to solve your problems. That's the Master Series next Monday. All right, and so we hope to see you next time. And don't forget, in the meantime, to vote for your choice of session topics coming up. There'll be some delay between the voting and the scheduling. We need to find a presenter, and we need to get them get their presentation together. But we're certainly already getting votes for what is interesting to talk about. And please send other topic suggestions in.
Yeah, if you have suggestions of things that you'd like to hear discussed at the TC Dojo, please let us know. If you have a presenter that you would like to hear from during this TC Dojo, you can also let us know that as well. All right, so we'll see you all in August. Everyone have a great day.